Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we are continuing our study of the life and letters of the Apostle Peter. Well, really to cover the life of the Apostle Peter, we'd have to cover the entire ministry of Jesus because he's there for everything. I mean, absolutely everything. He and James and John are taking places, as we saw at the Mount of Transfiguration, where the other apostles are not. Why did Jesus single these three out? And these three in particular, and then three in general. We're not exactly sure, but he did. And it might be something as simple as personal friendship. It's not wrong that we are closer to some people than we are to others, just naturally. It doesn't mean that we don't have agape love for everyone. And if while Jesus was on earth, he felt a little closer to these three, I don't think that we should second guess that. And I don't know, that may not be it at all. Just thinking. But anyway, we are in John chapter 13. Jesus is washing the disciples' feet, and Peter again. Because of the thing that he says, which is not the right thing. The fact that Peter, in this instance, again, doesn't get it, generates the lesson that Jesus is going to deliver to us. It is the night of the Passover. Jesus is instituting the Lord's Supper. What we know from Matthew, Mark, and Luke is that the supper began with the bread, ended with the wine, and in the middle of the dinner, John tells us, Jesus gets up to wash the disciples' feet because no one had done this. The most basic act of hospitality, gesture of caring for someone else had not been done because there was no servant there, and none of the disciples would take upon themselves the role of the servant, and so Jesus did. And John is quite vivid in his description of how Jesus was fully aware of what was about to happen and who he was, and that he loved these guys and held on to them, except, of course, for Judas until the very end. So he gets up, takes off his outer garment, wraps a towel around him and girds himself with a towel, pours water in a basin, and starts to wash the disciples' feet. So let's begin reading Matthew chapter 13. I'm going to begin reading with verse 3. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come forth from God and going back to God, rose from supper, laid aside his garments, and taking a towel, he girded himself about, and he poured water into the basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. And so he came to Simon Peter, and he said to him, Lord, you wash my feet? And Jesus answered and said to him, What I do, you do not realize now, but you will understand it later. Peter said to him, You will never wash my feet. Jesus answered and said to him, If I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew the one who was betraying him. For this reason he said, Not all of you are clean. And so when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because I am. If I then, the Lord and teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you should do as I did to you. Well, he has a lot more to say, but we're going to stop right there in the text. Peter is not having a good night. He's not going to continue to have a good. He's going to continue to not have a good night. He gets it wrong here. He gets it wrong in the garden. He gets it wrong at the arrest, and then he's going to deny Jesus 3 times, which Jesus told him he was going to do. He just is not having a good night. He's not on the same page as Jesus at all at this point. But can almost feel like he's grasping at straws. He takes this extreme behavior. You're not going to wash my feet. And then wash all of me. I mean, he's jumping from one extreme to the other, which he will continue to do. Try to chop off Malchus's head and then run away afterwards. I mean, and then follow at a distance and then deny Jesus. I mean, it's not a good night for him, and it's not a good night right here because he refuses to get it, and Jesus has to rebuke him for that. Think about the time this would have taken. The basin and the towel are already there for this, and nobody did it. I mean, it's glaring that nobody did it. So Jesus does it. And I'm sure some of them felt the rebuke. And I'm sure Peter felt it, or he would not have resisted. No, you're not going to do this for me, because that's like putting salt in the wound of your own guilt. And Jesus said, if I can't serve you, if you don't accept service from me, you can't have a part in me. So he tries to make it something that isn't service at all. This is metaphorical. This is about cleansing. Make me ceremonially clean all over. And Jesus says, no, that's not what it's about. You've already had a bath. You're already ceremonially clean. This is about the act of service of washing your feet. And it's about nothing else. And then he says, you call me Lord and Master, and that's who I am. You should call me that. But I got down on my knees and I washed your feet, every one of you. I washed Peter's feet. I washed Judas's feet. If you're going to be my disciples, you will wash each other's feet. It is to this day the most powerful of lessons in service to each other that we have anywhere. That God himself would get down on his knees and wash their feet because it needed to be done. Well, Peter will be transformed by this lesson and will be observant of it in the future, as we will say. But he's got to get through the rest of this night, and that's not going to go so well. Tomorrow, Jesus is going to tell Peter that he will betray him. And he'll also tell him, I'm praying for you. So, thank you for joining me today, and we look forward to continuing our study tomorrow.